Good morning, Nigeria. Welcome to Daybreak, reaching you live from the nation's capital in Abuja. I am Ayubele. Thank you for joining us this morning, and we are super excited to have you join us. Indeed, in this show, we bring perspectives and analysis to you on all issues of national concern, and we do this every weekday, 7 to 9 a.m., and in the weekends, we do this 8 to 10 a.m. So it's a show you want to make a date with every morning, just to have an idea of what's going on. Today on the program, we'll be talking about the central bank's monetary policy. The committee keeps interest rate unchanged, and we'll also be talking about the federal government's decision to suspend the removal of fuel subsidy in the country and how that is going to have an implication on our economy. Of course, the National Assembly also is in the news again, and talking about the Electoral Amendment Act. The harmonized bill has been passed by both chambers of the National Assembly, and we await transmission and then subsequent signing or giving assent by the President. So we'll be looking at all of this today, and of course, as usual, we'll be taking a look at the dailies on Daybreak, taking a look at the stories on the front pages of our newspapers. Newspaper reviewer Ben Sheman, the director, News Voice of Nigeria, is in the studio to give us perspectives on that. Before then, let's take a look at the news highlights, and quite a number of stories there, really. Resource Center for Human Rights and Civic Education is calling on the federal government to expedite actions towards the passage of the Child Rights Act across the 36 states of the Federation. The call follows the abduction and gruesome murder of 5-year-old Hanif Abubakar by her school proprietor in Kano. In a statement issued by the executive director of the center, the group said only 24 of Nigeria's 36 states have adopted the Child's Right Act 2003, which guarantees the rights of all children in the country. It, however, advocated for a whole-of-government and whole-of-society approach to identify and prevent threats to children's rights. So the next one, the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria on Tuesday voted to hold the monetary policy rate at 11.5% for the opt-in time. Now, reading a communique after the committee's 283rd meeting on Tuesday, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, the central bank's governor, said that the MPC also unanimously agreed to hold all other monetary policy parameters constant. The asymmetric corridor was thus retained at plus 100 and minus 700 basis points around the MPR, the cash reserved ratio at 27.5% and the liquidity ratio at 30%. Now, Emefiele said the parameters were retained to control the optics seen in inflationary pressure in the month of December 2022. Again, President Muhammadu Buhari has launched the national policy on the 5th generation technology for Nigeria's digital economy. The president, speaking at the presentation of the national policy on 5G approved at the Federal Executive Council meeting, also directed all security institutions to immediately leverage the new technology to enhance security in the country. He said the federal government will take full advantage of the opportunities provided by 5G for the economy, security, and well-being of the nation. Buhari also allayed fears over the health safety of 5G, affirming that such issues have been effectively addressed in developing a policy that suits the country. So there you have it. The news highlights for today, the 26th of January 2022. Now, let's take a look at the events that made history on a day like this in our world history as well. Take a look. Well, there you have it. Today in history, always very important to keep in mind some of the activities that happened in our world, and which is why we do this every day. You know what they say, those who do not know history are doomed to repeat it. Well, we have also another person that, well, is now joining us in the studio. Who say that?
I don't know why you're laughing. I was like, all right, good morning. It feels good to be here. Talking about today in history, did you know that today is International Customs Day?
Very important.
Yes.
It's something that we must take seriously. The Nigeria Customs, for instance, is one arm of the government that generates revenue. And in fact, one of the highest institutions of government that generates revenue. I mean, we're talking trillions of naira, you know. But again, we cannot do that effectively if we do not block all the leakages, you know, smugglers everywhere on our borders, and so it means that they have to up their game. Thankfully, in recent times, we've seen the government, you know, equip them with some equipment,
some
all of
arms,
that.
and yeah, to protect themselves and also protect the borders. But then, you know, talking about today, a lot of meaningful things actually happened. You know, Chimamanda Adichie, yes, Chimamanda Ngozi, you know, today, she actually, in 2018, she had a French interview, and she asked, are there any bookshops in Nigeria? I'm putting the question to you right now. Are there still any bookshops in Nigeria?
There are those that sell religious books. I think they are more common.
They're more, yeah.
Not literal, not what do you call them now? Well, they are all literatures, but secular literature is rare these
days. You know,
days.
a while back, we were actually talking about reading culture in Nigeria and in the children, Nigerian children, and everything. And funny enough, even most adults have resorted to, you know, reading on their phones or on their tablets, you know, ebooks and all that. And in most cases, they say reading from a hardcover, you know, helps you assimilate more than reading from your phone, which is virtual.
Yeah, you know, with this digital technologies, a lot of distraction, really. If you are using your mobile phone, for instance, there's a lot of distraction. So while you're reading maybe a particular article or a story, or, you know, on your phone or on your tab, the next thing, boom, something enters.
Something comes in, and then you get distracted.
To check it out. So it's either WhatsApp or Facebook or, you know, other social media platforms. And aside from that, I mean, an alert could just come in, and that will just change everything.
Your mood, you know? And everything.
so yeah, I believe so, that reading the hard copy, I mean, the hard copy doesn't have any other...
Seeing it there right beside you, you know, motivates you to actually read more. I have a lot of ebooks on my phone, and I don't know if I've read like up to 3. Yes, you talked about distractions.
Perhaps maybe we should look into having other digital devices that are dedicated just for reading. Maybe,
yes, they are. They're available.
Without any social media, anything. It's just, you can't even browse with it.
They are available,
you know, just maybe to motivate people to begin to read.
Those are available, but I don't think they're as available in Nigeria as they are in developed countries. You know, like you have the Kindle. Yes, you know, it's strictly for ebooks. Nothing, no SIM card, no distractions, no browsing, nothing. It's just like a tab for reading.
I think that will go a long way. So for readers, I mean, people who love reading, there are those who reading comes naturally. I mean, they just love to read. I mean, they just can't see anything without reading it. So, I mean, and then for those who are not in the habit of reading as well, I believe that will be a great motivation.
Yeah, it will.
So they should do that, yeah. All right, now let's take a look at our newspapers for today, and just right after this breather. Stay with us.
But in a situation where you find that a look at the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that.
All right, taking a look at the papers right away. We have the Daily Trust newspaper, which is what we're going to begin with this morning. And they're very interesting stories, really. There's a turn of events. The lead story, petrol subsidy retained for political reasons. That's according to experts. PIA can be implemented now. It's a plot to finance 2023 elections. That's according to the PDP. And then another writer says, U-turn, not enough. Fix refineries, reduce price, NLC tells government. I mean, we ask the question, who will bail the cat? When it comes to petrol subsidy in Nigeria is an age-long discussion. We've all seen the need for us to remove the subsidy, but who has the courage to do it? It's been passed down from one administration to another, and mostly for political reasons, I believe. When is this going to happen? Well, we don't know. We await. The next one there, it shows you the motorist queue up at filling station at Jabi. That's the pictorial. Yesterday, there was this panic buying, that we saw. A lot of people at filling stations queuing for the fear of the unknown. A lot of uncertainty as to what's going to happen now if the fuel subsidy is removed and all that. But thankfully, government have said, no, we are not going to take off the subsidy just yet. Other stories at the top, below the nameplate, Transparency International ranks Nigeria second most corrupt nation in West Africa. And that's on page 10. You may want to pick a copy of the Trust newspaper and have an idea, the details of what's happening. Well, from 26 back in 2019 and now 24. And that's, ironical. And the next one says, Buhari to security agencies, use 5G to fight insecurity. And then the next one, security operatives dislodge, kill ISWAP fighters in Niger. At the bottom, over 1/4 of world's malaria deaths recorded in Nigeria. That's according to the federal government. Another one, Zamfara car dealer, 4 others arraigned for killing, 8 for killing and eating 9-year-old. So it's not just poisoning of children now, but even eating them. What kind of society do we have? It looks like everything is crashing on Nigeria. I mean, malaria, we're there. Corruption, we're there. I mean, cannibalism now. I mean, abduction and all sorts. We need to change as a country. The next one, Dangote retains Africa's richest man position, Boa 5th. And then the next one, no basis for judges to earn less than National Assembly members. And that's according to the Vice President, Yemi Osinbajo. These are the major stories on our newspapers this morning. That's Daily Trust.
All right. With that, we'll move on to Blueprint newspaper. And we have the lead story there that says Petroleum Industry Act. Buhari shifts fuel subsidy removal to successor July 2023. And we have writers here that say to seek NAS approval, NLC suspends planned nationwide strike. Fuel subsidy inflation. Electioneering to drive 2022 economic policies. We also have some at the top here that says Dangote tops Forbes 2022 Africa Richest list. On data privacy, FG begins probe of digital loan providers, and prosecution of Boko Haram insurgents resumes soon, says Malami. We also have insecurity. Northeast must rise from ashes of destruction, and that's from accredited to Zulum. And it says rolls out 25-year master plan, woos colleague governors. Collaboration needed to achieve NEDC objectives, says Sadia Farouk. CBN returns lending rate at 11.5%. And if you come down to the bottom, you'd see a story that says on electoral bill, House, Senate concur on consensus, and Lowen assures Buhari's assent. Details of that story on page 7. We also have kidnappers killed my 8-year-old daughter after collecting 3 million naira ransom, says Zaria resident. We have UK abolishes COVID-19 testing for vaccinated travelers. Osun 2022, Oyetola set to recontest, receives EOL nomination forms. And then digital economy to add $88 billion, create 3 million jobs in 10 years, says federal government. And these are the stories we have on front page of Blueprint newspaper.
All right. Let's take a look at the Guardian newspaper. And the lead story, of course, on fuel subsidy. They say government will borrow more as states struggle to survive. That's OPS warns. Buhari suspends PIA by 18 months. NLC shelves protest, saying no law is cast in stone. RMU urges sustenance of negotiations. And then you have the next rider there to that says panic buying as petrol queues return to Abuja. Oyo CSOs vow to go ahead with protest. Doomsday, says retired Army General. NMDPRA to partner NLNG to solve nation's energy challenges. And then at the top there, you'd see thieves break into Arik airplane in Lagos, strip cockpit gadgets. Wow, that's quite audacious.
They're becoming creative
How did
by
that
the
even
day.
happen?
No idea. They're becoming very creative by the day.
I mean, you have to break into the airport before you can have access to a plane, isn't it?
Well, I mean, there are lots of bushes surrounding the airports in Nigeria, so they could have come in from any other place.
So the airport is not fenced. In other words, it's just open
It's barbed wired.
to anyone.
Yes, the fencing is barbed wired mostly,
So
so
they break the
you
barbed
can,
wires,
yes, you can actually
cut it.
cut through that barbed wire. Very easy to come in.
Well, it also means then that we do not have vigilance. I mean, we do not have people, you know. So what happens to all the computers in the airport? I mean, anyway, let me just leave that for now. The next story there, violence in Kaduna over killing of herder. You'd find details of that on page 28. And then the next one, Ebonyi declares former rep wanted over alleged inciting statement. And then Rivers aircraft abandoned by Amechi administration discovered in Germany, says Wike. And then the next one at the bottom there, other stories, talks about Ekiti. Police warn against breach of peace as Governor Emmanuel heads PDP primary committee. And then Nigeria drops on Transparency's corruption index. And that's it ranks 154. You'd find details of that on page 4 of The Guardian. And that's all.
All right, with that, we'll move on to the Nation newspaper. Right at the top, you'd find stories that says Dangote remains Africa's richest businessman worth $12.1 billion. We also have Wike accuses Amechi of dumping Rivers plane in Germany. Over 1,200 delegates to pick Ekiti PDP candidate today. And House Leader Dogwa welcomes 28th child. Wow, congratulations are in order. We also have no capital flight from Nigeria, says Emefiele. MPC retains interest rate of 11.5%. We also have on electoral bill, lawmakers okay consensus with tough conditions. Party must obtain aspirants' written consent. And the lead story there says subsidy extension stalls Petroleum Industry Act. And we have writers that say PIA for return to lawmakers. Buhari okays continuation of subsidy payment. Labour suspends protest plan. And right at the bottom there, you'd find stories that say massive endorsement for Oyetola's second term bid. Governor gets expression of interest form. And then Sanwo-Olu, Tinubu, Obasa mourn ex-Lagos SSG Adeniran Ogunsonya. These are the stories on the Nation newspaper.
Well, one interesting one, the House Leader Dogwa welcoming the 28th baby.
child.
I mean, something about father of all nations, isn't it? Recall the lawmaker that boasted the great chambers, as to having wives, many wives and many children and all of that. So he's become Nigeria's father of nations, isn't it? A celebrity lawmaker for having plenty of children. I wonder how that will make it to be a story on the front page of our newspaper.
Quite interesting.
I mean, it's just the flip side of it. All right, let's take a look at the Punch newspaper now. The first story there at the top says, African Airlines passenger traffic crashes by 65% over Omicron and others, and that's on page 20. And then the next one at the top, National Assembly agrees on consensus, others list conditions. MPC, experts foresee tougher days as CBN retains leading rate. The next one, Nigeria sinks deeper in corruption rating, drops to 154. ICPC disagrees. And then the lead story on the Punch, subsidy. NNPC may deduct over 1 trillion naira from FAC in 6 months. And then the riders there to that story says FG plans PIA amendment, extends subsidy removal by 18 months, and then NLC suspends protest, says talks with federal government continue. States face hard times over salary payment, others economists warn. And then at the bottom there shows you the pictorial, first of all, shows you the immediate past Lagos Commissioner of Police, Assistant Inspector General Hakeem Odumosu, during his pulling out parade at the police college in Ikeja. And then at the bottom of that paper, you see IG fortifies security as Ekiti PDP APC primaries hold today, Thursday. And then Lagos housewife allegedly kills husband with pressing iron during argument. How gruesome is that? Really?
We saw the story yesterday. It's quite a sad one.
Again, I asked the question, have we lost our humanity? Because we really, maybe we should do an overhaul, a kind of some mental check for all Nigerians.
Well, the husband was actually accused of cheating, and that was what started the whole argument. And
that's enough to use an iron on someone's back.
I would say, her anger got the best of her, and this is why we should learn as much as we can to suppress, our feelings if they're negative.
Well, the last story there, Fenifere plans political party insist on state police constitution review. These are the kind of stories that we see on our newspapers, every morning. So let's welcome our guests and get perspectives to this. Ben Shema is in the studio. He is the director, News Voice of Nigeria. Good morning and welcome to Daybreak.
Good morning, sir.
My pleasure. Thank you very much once again.
Yes. Just on a lighter note, maybe I should just get your thoughts on, the lawmaker who is now father of nations. I don't know why I call him that.
Honestly,
why should that story make it to the front page?
Well, sometimes for some comic reliefs, some people would, there are too many serious issues. So you introduce some things to divert attention, because when he actually took his 4 wives to the National Assembly and counted the children and said, still counting, more are coming, and so be it. And I'm still talking something in terms of fixation. When you are reading today in history, when Chimamanda was asked at their bookshops in Nigeria, that celebrity, that also tells you the illiteracy at the other side across the ocean. I also still remember a colleague who left Voice of Nigeria, is now with BBC. When he was in Egypt at the point, he was asked if there were aeroplanes in Nigeria. It's so funny that we went for a conference in Germany. Someone who is a South African citizen but Sri Lanka origin, he was asking me whether there are ACs in Nigeria. You know,
Wow.
those fixations.
Perhaps
Why Nigeria?
the picture of Africa and Nigeria seem to be, you know, this zoo or this village where there's no electricity, there's no infrastructure.
And the people live in huts.
You know, and all of that. But you know, issues like this, I don't know why I'm so, you know, fixated on this Dogwa story. I mean, this is a lawmaker. So the conversation about him now on the national dailies is not about a bill he proposes, but about how many children he's got. Isn't that a contradiction?
Honestly, the luck he has is he has some state apparatus. He's a lawmaker, he has bogus salary, nice houses to take care of them. But let him fix himself, say, within a village setting, you realize that it will just go the way some people say the mouth God has created. God has the way of feeding the same mouth. I think we should also be, he'll say it is right, and of course that is his right.
Yes,
but
it is.
again, let me quickly go into when you are also reading today in history, and today you said today is World Customs Day. Honestly, there is this gate that the airport authority does not even allow the customs to check what they are doing there. In a situation where we're fighting corruption, where Nigeria has been rated that low, and yesterday or day before yesterday, the customs had to break into that gate, and it brought big wahala. The customs have taken over that gate. Why is it that customs, Air Force, nobody passes there, and it is a gate?
And yet
And
we
are
have
seeing-
armed robbers,
Exactly.
you know, penetrating
Coming
the
into-
You
airport.
see an armed robber beating every security, entering the tarmac, going to a parked aeroplane. How was it open? And he went to the cockpit and stole vital gadgets. It says a
So
lot.
at the end of the day, we are not that security sensitive.
Uh,
after
It
all.
might
honestly.
be an inside
And
job
I'm
or something.
wondering what would the CCTV, closed circuit monitoring TVs, what happened? Look at the array of security. Look at the checkpoints that you do before you bought a plane. I mean, how managed? What happened? Quite a lot of things. And that was why when they said customs broke into a gate to take charge, as we are talking, they are in charge of that gate today. And I think that, and I saw that the image maker of the FCAA, Madam Grace Dangana or something, she's saying it's wrong for the customs to have done that. And the spokesman for the customs is also replying, James Atta or something. He said,
Joseph
"Look,
Atta.
yes, we have to do it because we provide the airport security. And why is it that we cannot just check there? There could be some infiltrations there, as we are seeing. Government agencies should just stop fighting themselves.
But exactly, which is, I want to ask the question, what happened to synergy? What happened to working together as a team? Because,
Exactly.
I mean, these are all government agencies, isn't
And we
it?
saw it in the case of Police Service Commission versus the IG. Here we are in short of police personnel. Now you want to have these recruits so that you train them in police colleges. Now the issue became as to who really should do the recruitment. Is it the Office of the Inspector General of Police or the Police Service Commission? And again, they drag themselves to court. And I mean, this is police versus police, Nigerian police, our police. I think that they should help the president. Let us win every war. We cannot turn the nozzle of the gun against ourselves. It doesn't say well about us at all. Let us indeed serve Nigeria, because we said we'll serve Nigeria. And that's what, once you are appointed in government, it's like you have a covenant. Let me serve Nigeria.
All right.
Now, let's move on to another story that made rounds on every newspaper, talking about the president removing or shifting fuel subsidy to his successor in 2023. Now, what's your take on that? And also, there are lots of different papers actually have different titles on NLC planning to suspend strike. Some are saying the strike continues, while others are saying, they've suspended the strike.
the strike cannot continue for obvious reasons, because the reason for calling the rolling out workers on the streets are no longer in existence. But government, in doing that too, took cognizance of the provisions of the Petroleum Industry Act. Of course, you have unbundled that company. It therefore allows the companies to determine prices, import, sell at your own price. But again, it also allows the government a kind of a window where, yes, you can still extend that kind of a period. You provide this subsidy. But like you can see from the riders, the kickers of these headlines, there are many interpretations. PDP is saying, no, government is simply trying to play politics with it. But again, when you look at in terms of what do you call the need to serve humanity, is this the correct time for you when you say Nigerians are suffering? If you remove this subsidy, what will it look like? But on the other side too, if who are the beneficiaries of this subsidy? Someone somewhere should be benefiting from it. And now, that's why some people are saying, do this turnaround maintenance of the refineries. And I think you employ people, you generate employment, you export what you refine here to West African countries. It costs so much outside Nigeria.
You know, when the Minister of State for Petroleum, Timipre Silva, was making the announcement, he said upon consultations with stakeholders, the federal government decided to reverse its decision to remove the fuel subsidy. And so one wonders, the announcement was made before the consultation. That's what it means. So which should come first, consultation before the decision is taken? Because in this case, it appears that it was the announcement first before, and then we saw the public outcry and the uproar that that caused, and then we saw that reversal subsequently. Was it that the government just wanted to test the waters and see, okay, let's say we're going to do this and see the reaction? Are they going to take it or not? Do you think that that's the case?
Well, you see, in journalism, let's borrow what happens in newsrooms. What we call behind the headlines. When you see a headline, there must have been some debates before the headlines were actually cast and now for the public to consume. What am I trying to say? Copy-paste that. There must have been some informal consultations, and of course the cost was clear for them, and that was why they made the announcement before the meeting. But I think that be as it may, it's as far as I'm concerned, personally, I think it's still a 50-50 thing. It's like still delaying the evil day. If truly it costs this much to import, and you now come and sell at a less price, government is running at a loss. And if therefore companies, since the unbundling has taken place and you're now giving that to some people, and to import is going to be private business, like we used to have NITEL, it took time. If you had to belong to own a landline. But today all of that has been demystified.
You know, the crux of the matter is that why a lot of reactions trail this announcement is because of the implication that is going to have on the Nigeria's economy, the hardship that is going to bring upon people and all of that. And so people are saying that these solutions, or I would say the measures that you are proposing as a palliative, as a measure to cushion the effects, is not consistent. And experts are saying we need to get our refineries working. So the 18-month extension, is that enough to get those refineries working if that didn't happen in the last 6 years now?
Well, hoping that in terms of even maintenance of these refineries, Chiyoda, for example, some of these Japanese companies, that they will still be in existence, that they still have the machines that will still make all that we use to refine our petrol. These are things that should be looked at. And again, some of these are engineers too. We should be looking inwards in terms of maintenance of these refineries, because where we have the technicians so few, yet we have those in services department they are large in number, will not do justice to it. But again, when you look at it, when people say yes, this is done because of political considerations, you hardly can push that away, because if Nigeria is moving towards elections, it's not time for labor to roll out workers in the streets. It's not time for government to now say, look, we're also removing subsidy. And that was why at the point they had to sit to come to terms. I think the 18 months, things could be done if truly government is committed to it. So, like the Hosaman will say, Rana Muduchi, the day is like a scale. The time will come, 18 months, we've started counting. So let's see what happens between now and 18 months. And if they actually mean it, it's doable.
Okay. All right, now let's talk about the rate at which children are actually being kidnapped these days. We've seen the story of Hanifa Abubakar in Kano and the whole controversy that surrounded it. We also have heard of a 9-year-old girl in Zaria who was kidnapped and killed. And now we're seeing a story of somebody in Zamfara, a Zamfara car dealer, and 4 others who have been arraigned for killing and eating a 9-year-old.
This is cannibalism, and it's not welcome at all. I mean, are there no animals that one can buy, slaughter, and eat? For a car dealer who indeed has money, why the choice of human flesh?
Yes, rituals,
flesh,
perhaps.
and not just that, babies. The other one day, there was a time one was paraded. He said he was interested in the throats of human beings. You know, you mean you eat them? And he was saying they are palatable. No, something is wrong with us. We need to restructure our minds, honestly. And this is where we have to have traditional rulers on board. We have to have psychologists on board. We have to have our religious leaders on board. I mean, we should know the sanctity of life. We are graduating to the animal kingdom. But I think that we should segregate this kind of people who indeed are few but are capable of giving. In fact, they are already giving us bad names. The police should be up and doing. Everyone every hand should be on deck to ensure that this is checkmated. We cannot allow this kind of anomy, this lawlessness, to prevail. We cannot see cultism here and there. And when people are kidnapped, again, look at some vital organs are removed. What is happening? I think that look, Nigeria is under attack, and there has to be a serious. See the rate at which people consume some materials you can't define, and they are made within society. Drinking has become one serious thing. Look, if you see what they take in villages and how people smuggle them into villages and how young children are now challenging, go to secondary school, pupils, students are challenging teachers, beating up teachers, and you see some parents even supporting them. No, something is wrong. It's like the fabric of society, what holds those together, is going, there has to be reorientation. And that is why the National Orientation Agency should come on board, have offices. I mean, let us begin to talk seriously in churches, in mosques, and even when it comes to invoking even the traditional, because many of people still don't have believe in these Abrahamic religions. Let us, have everything.
One of the things that religion helps to do is to preach morality and to teach people, about the fear of God and all that. And Nigeria is rated as one of the most religious countries in the world. and we have these things happening. What kind of religion do we even practice, really?
And that is why you have to juxtapose it with what Amnesty International is saying. Transparency International. We are so religious up there to God. But down there, I mean, we are so corrupt. Look at the rating today. That in West Africa, 16 countries in West Africa, I mean, that we are number 2. Nigeria. I mean, it says a lot.
Despite anti-corruption fights.
Exactly. Look at the agencies that are fighting corruption. So many of them. The police, ICPC, EFCC. Name them. I mean, yet we are having many of these things. And the president also came on board because he said he was going to fight corruption. And I think that, look, when the president appoints you to be in charge of the fight against corruption, you are heading an agency. It's not the duty of the president again to begin to push you. Do your job. Do your job. What's the mandate in which you, what does your letter of appointment say? What's the term of your reference when they say this is your appointment letter? And that agency, you are the head. So we expect that, I mean, the Interreligious Council, His Eminence, you see the Sultan of Sokoto, you also got the Kenya president, they all are working in tandem. But why is it that it's not permeating down the hearts of Nigerians? It's serious. We need a total spiritual rebirth. Honestly, we do need that. And we are that religious. But look at some countries that don't even have any position for that position, that for God in heaven. Yet the progress, why is it so? Because they have justice in their mind. They talk of equity. But in our own case, people are judged based on where you come from. You are judged based on your religion. You are judged based on some societies that you belong. It does not matter whether these societies are clandestine in nature. These things will have to stop. We need a spiritual rebirth. Honestly, we do need it.
Well, you've said it all. I mean, it's quite horrific to have this kind of experiences that the country is dealing with. Well, one other story on the front page is, of course, is the harmonization of the electoral bill by lawmakers at the National Assembly. What do we expect in the coming days?
Well, we expect either that the president will sign or he refuses to sign. 2 options. At the point the National Assembly was divided, the Senate had the 3: indirect primaries, direct primaries, and consensus. But the House of Reps didn't have the consensus. But as usual, there's always what you call committee of whole. You have a committee from the House of Reps, committee of from the Senate. They sit down and harmonize. And that has been done. So we expect a clean bill now to be taken to the president. But are there some other hidden clauses that are enshrined in it to be sent to the president, where again we will make some observations? And again, the Independent National Electoral Commission is saying that its releasing of the timetable is also hinged on what you have as the provisions in the electoral bill. So Nigerians are waiting patiently so that we don't see government agencies, we don't see arms of government, hamstringing, putting some clocks in the wheel of progress. I believe that with Nigeria, let's go the ways of NPN of those days. They will say one nation, one destiny, and this always the forefinger they were always giving Nigerians. So let's imbibe that one nation, one destiny kind of a movement to ensure that personal egos, personal clashes, personal interests do not override national interest.
Well, thank you so much. We'll go on a short break now, and then when we return, we'll continue the discussion on the program. Please stay with us.
welcome back. If you're just joining us, you're on to Daybreak on Trust TV. Now, we're about to wrapping up the newspaper review, and we still have Ben Shemang in the studio with us. But, you know, just before we wrap up, there's this particular story, and this is not just, it didn't just happen in the UK, it happened in some other countries as well, and they have actually abolished COVID-19 testing for vaccinated travelers. And we heard in some countries that, you know, they've asked their residents to actually treat COVID-19 as flu, and face masks is not compulsory, you know, anymore. What's your take on that?
Well, it all started from them. China and Europe was inundated with this pandemic before it came to Africa. And when you look at the casualty figures in Africa, they are still down there. You can't compare it with one country. And for them to start doing all of that, also, we checked the British Prime Minister. At the point he attended a party where he had no mask, no social distance, and he was almost being impeached last week. And you can see that they all are fighting to ensure that, look, let's relax this matter. It also tells you maybe the level at which they've imported or made the medicine. They are sure of something that we in Africa are not yet sure of. And that is why also the Nigerian government is saying, look, don't just make or manufacture this medicine or vaccines and return them in Europe. Also make them available in Africa. And so maybe there is a ray of hope somewhere. If not, tell me people who indeed, like we were doing in secondary school, light out. Once they say everybody go to bed, you just disappear to bed, and so be it. If today they are saying they are relaxing it, Husseina, they have seen something we have not seen. And I hope that there is a very big success in the fight against this pandemic.
We also have Bill Gates. I read a story yesterday, Bill Gates saying world leaders need to prepare for the next pandemic.
And that is also where it becomes suspicious. Because if you check in some circles, they begin to tell you the world is overpopulated. And that's why you've seen this climate change due to human activities. And some people appear to be taking some deliberate actions to reduce humanity. And that does not augur well. If you go to Europe, who say now you need to go to some places of worship? You just see only old grandparents going to worship.
In fact, talking about Bill Gates, I think there was this video that went viral on social media, and not just Bill Gates, even the former president of the United States, Barack Obama, where they were where they're making sort of projection, you know, about, you know, a pandemic that is to come, and that the world needs to prepare and all of that. Those videos are there, and people have used it to, you know, talk about this conspiracy, you know, about COVID
and they even warn Africa. They said Africa is going to be worse hit. Why Africa? Because if you look at the population of the world, just calculate and see what we have in Africa, especially in Nigeria. If you go to some website and say world population, by the time it reaches Nigeria, there is this statistics, informatics. You just see that every second that clicks, they are saying a child is being born in Nigeria. So there's also this target against the Nigerian population, and that was why when you had polio, some people refused to take, because there were also misgivings. They say, if you take this, your children will be barren. So it needed a lot of information.
But is this true, really? Some of this
well, I am not a scientist, and I can't prove anything otherwise. But when things of this nature come on board, it's for Nigerian scientists too to also test some of these things in the presence of religious leaders, because we have said something here. Religion is used in a wrong way in Nigeria. Instead of showing who your neighbor is in terms of friendship, we are now seeing that you open a school and begin to eat the children as a meal. You know, it shouldn't be the thing. So Nigeria should watch out, and let's see. There has to be some orientation and reorientation when it comes to some of these pandemics.
All right, thank you so much,
Thank you
Ben
so
Shemang,
much.
Director of Voice of Nigeria. We appreciate you coming on the program this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
All right. We will go on a short break now, and then when we come back, we'll take a look at other discussions on the program. Still talking the reversal of the first subsidy removal, and of course the consensus by the National Assembly, as far as the Electoral Act is concerned. So stay with us. All right, thank you for staying with us. You're watching Trust TV's Daybreak Show, the morning show here. And here we'll bring you perspectives and analysis on the stories that make the headlines on our newspapers and, of course, national issues of concern. And now we'll be being joined in the studio by Honorable Mohammed Kumalia, former minority leader, House of Representatives, and he's going to be talking to us about the electoral amendment bill that was recently passed by the National Assembly. Good morning and welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Yes. So finally, we can say it's uhuru, given the fact that the contention in the electoral bill has been resolved. Talking about the mode of nominating candidates for political parties. Do you share that thought?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, and good morning. I think, as far as the National Assembly is concerned, they seem to have listened to the concerns of the President in terms of the mode of primaries for the for elections within the parties, and have come up with 3 different modes of conducting primary elections: the direct, indirect, and the consensus method. It's not over until it is over, meaning that we still have to wait for the President's signature, or rather assent, as it is called in the legislative parlance. Be that as it may, I think one issue that has been of concern to some Nigerians is the inclusion of the consensus method as a manner of primaries, and enacting that by law. And I seem to share that opinion also, that consensus method is actually does not support the ethos of democratic process in terms of people participation in the process of electing who their representatives should be. If you observed, it was introduced at the Senate because it was not in the version that was initially passed by the House of Representatives. But even the Senate that passed it was struggling to now define what consensus should be and what are the guiding principles through which consensus arrangement can be made before a person is declared as having emerged or elected, and so on. And to my mind, no matter what definition you give consensus, it is really open to some, leaders, so to speak, to easily manipulate the process. Because
So you are not confident about the new conditions for consensus. I mean, the usual practice is sometimes you just find that there will be some lists flying around, and most times they call it unity list, and then it has been unanimously decided that, okay, A, B, C, D, C should occupy so and so and so positions. That has been the practice. But with this now, they seem to be more strict with the processes of ensuring that consensus is being come up with in political parties. So you are not confident that some of these conditions can check some of the concerns and fears that you have?
First of all, I haven't been able to see the conditions, but I can tell you, knowing the kind of the culture of politics we have in Nigeria, even the direct and indirect primaries, as it were, still have challenges in terms of practicalizing it out there on the field. Oftentimes, let's talk about indirect primaries, where delegates are elected by card-carrying members of the party, and then those delegates will now go ahead and elect the representative of their choice for any office, be it the office of president, the office of governor, members of the National Assembly, House of Assembly, and what have you. And we often see this exercise, especially, here in Abuja at the National Convention, where a national chairman or a president is elected. At the level of the state, the same thing happens. State congresses are held. But oftentimes, you see that those delegates, there are the list of delegates, but the list of delegates are not given to the candidates. So as somebody who wants to contest an election, there's a list of delegates who have been elected, so to speak, but you don't have the list for you to even campaign among the delegates, so you don't even know who they are. So you see, even the more representative method, which is the direct and the indirect, which I think, no matter how challenging they are, at least gives opportunity for members of the party to express their views as to who they want as their representative. Even that is challenging, but at least it is clear. But when you say consensus of who? Who decides? Because elections is about choosing someone by a given set of people. So if, for instance, you elect somebody through direct or indirect primaries, that is the aggregate consensus of the members of the party. So why are you going back to say that you're going to elect somebody through consensus? In other words, there'll be no voting.
So
before now.
So in the first place, if you have a direct and indirect primaries, there wouldn't even be any need for any consensus.
Any consensus whatsoever, because if there's, for instance, just one person that wants to contest for a particular office, and there's no other person that wants to contest, then even that person, based on the rules we had, or we might still have in the political parties, is you go through a process of voting, what they call affirmation, yes or no. So much so that if the no's are greater than the yeses, then that person is not a representative because people don't want it. So even in a situation where there's just one person, that person can be rejected. That is democracy.
True.
But why you sit down and say consensus, and then you say you define what consensus means, and then you say there's a process. We're waiting to see that process, but personally, as far as I'm concerned, consensus arrangement is not and does not reflect what elections representative elections stand for and what they should mean. Elections should be about members of the party, be they ordinary card-carrying members of the party or delegates that have been elected by these card-carrying members, voting for who they want. Because through consensus, it gives room for people to be suppressed. By the time, just as an example, a governor or somebody says, this is the guy I like, and I want everybody to withdraw. You're on your own. If you don't withdraw, let's go. You know what I'm saying? And then he'll come out and say, by the time everybody is intimidated and everybody withdraws, he'll come out and say, yeah, we elected this guy through consensus. Meanwhile, you don't know what happened behind the scene. But they'll use that consensus. So you're giving, they've done a fantastic job with the Electoral Act, no doubt about it. There are a lot of things, electronic voting, this and that, and so on, although I've not been able to see the full details of the Electoral Act. But the issue of this consensus, to me, is a downside. And I just hope and pray that one day, soon, that clause will be removed.
How, if you look at the indirect primaries, for instance, how do we guarantee, say, delegates, for instance, get to select the choice of the people that they, are delegating for? Yes, they are delegates, but they come from different wards, and constituencies. So how do we even ensure that these delegates are actually voting for the people that the majority of the constituents are supporting?
Well, that's also another challenge. You are right. But of course, once you elect a delegate, what that delegate is expected to do is to reflect the wishes of the people that elected him in casting his vote for who should be the representative. If you are elected as a delegate, it doesn't mean that you are on your own and you can just go and decide to vote for anybody of your choice, so to speak. You are supposed to mirror the wishes and aspirations of the people that voted you into being their representative. So for instance, if we elect you, I and her elect you as our representative, and we want you to go and vote for Mr. A. You're only an agent. You're supposed to go and vote for Mr. A. But if along the line you go and vote for Mr. B, you have not discharged the responsibility that you've been saddled with to represent our interest. But that's a discussion, if you like, at another level.
And I'm wondering if there's, at the party level, there's any mechanism to, check that, to make sure that there are maybe sanctions for delegates who do that, if there are.
Our democracy has not fully matured. There isn't anything like that. And even the card-carrying members that elect the delegates themselves do not sometimes necessarily hold the delegate to account in terms of who they want. I think in some cases they don't even know that it's their right to dictate to that delegate who they should vote for. So they'll just elect you. They feel they've done you a favor, you're on your own, you go and elect whoever you want to elect. They don't even know that he's supposed to come and consult you. It's okay, election is in a couple of days' time. We're going to go, gentlemen and ladies, who should we vote for? For the office of governor, or for the office of a member of the House of Representatives, or for the office of president. And they'll say, okay, you know what? Vote for Mr. X. And that is, no matter who else speaks to him, as far as he's concerned, these people have said, vote for Mr. X. He'll go there and cast his vote for that Mr. X. That's how it's supposed to be. But because even the citizens, the card-carrying members of the party themselves are not fully aware of those rights that they have, you often find delegates, expressing their own personal desires in electing their representatives instead of conferring with the people that elected them into office.
Okay, now earlier you said it's not over until it is over. Now, in your opinion, do you think the president will assent to the bill now, considering that consensus was never part of his recommendation?
No, it was. The president spoke about consensus himself
Okay.
during the media chat he had with Channels Television. I watched it, and when the president was asked why he didn't sign the bill, he said in a democratic process, people are supposed to be given options, and that the first version of the Electoral Act that was sent to him only prescribed one mode of primary, which is indirect. And he felt that was not right. And he specifically said that there are more than one option. There is the direct primary, he said there is indirect, and he said there is consensus. Even when the president said that, I was kind of like, what?
So he considers
he
consensus as also
a
mode of
an
primary.
option that could be, adopted in our election.
Precisely. And even when he said that, like I said, I just hoped in my mind that people didn't hear that, because
It's more like saying, okay,
he
you have a
just
free
put it there. Yeah, he just put it there
It's
and
more like saying you have a
allowed
free
them
ticket.
take it.
yeah,
Take it on.
And they took it. They heard him well, loud and clear. The Senate took it and put it there. But where you would see the problem is, even the Senate itself was struggling. Because when you say consensus, you're no more talking about an electoral process where some sort of election choice is given to people and people deciding by voting. Consensus means something else. Consensus means you go into one room, come out and say, okay, this is the guy.
But how do you arrive at a consensus?
I don't know.
Is it not when you throw open for an election and then maybe unanimously people decided that Mr. A should be, haven't gone through an election process.
Exactly.
And then you get to decide that, okay, based on the numbers that we have, everyone seems to be going for candidate A.
Yes.
And so you come up with,
Yes,
and
in
that
fact,
should be a
it should
consensus.
be slightly more than that. It should be slightly more than everybody seems to be going. Everybody needs to go for candidate A. Then you say, yeah, like you rightly said, I think the right word is unanimous. They have unanimously
Decision.
accepted so person. But it doesn't have to be unanimous. Elections is about majority rule.
Can there even be a
Simplicity.
unanimous, vote in an
It's
election?
possible, but it's rare, isn't it? It's not. Nothing is impossible. It's rare. However, the concept of democracy is about majority rule. Today, we have a president in office because the party of the president won the election for the office of president, and that's why the mantle of leadership of this country is saddled with the president, simply because he had more people that wanted him to be in office than the other candidate of the other party. You see how profound the wish of the people is in terms of giving you this level of responsibility. And it is as every other office is as important as the office of the president, depending on the level you are talking about. So if you are going to be my representative at the level of the House of Assembly, you're talking about maybe 500,000 people or 250,000 people wanting a particular person to represent them at the level of the House of Assembly, making laws for the good governance, for their well-being and welfare, for their peace and security. It's important and it's profound. So don't toy with such an important task that these people will be elected to do. So don't tell me that somebody will sit down, a governor and so on, call people, intimidate them, and then they come out and say, I've arrived, at who is going to represent so-so state constituency through consensus.
But isn't that a problem of political parties? Because from what we see, the practice is that the political parties seem to give so much power to the governors, even more than party chairmen in the states, from what we're seeing. They are called party leaders, And so I don't know, that's power that they, enjoy. Does it have limits at all?
Well, you see, it's a like there's a chicken and egg situation. It's not as if the political parties willingly donated these powers to the governors, so to speak. It is such that, unfortunately, the funding for the activities of these parties must often come from these governors. because they're the only people that have access to cash. We don't fund our parties. Members of the party don't give contributions to parties. In Senate climbs, what happens is ordinary card-carrying members of the party contribute to the running of the party. That is,
So no dues. We don't pay dues for political parties?
pay. Most often we don't pay. We don't pay. How much do we generate? You understand what I'm saying? That's one. Two, when a person wants to contest an office, he receives donations from the public that will form the pool of funds that he's going to access to fund his elections. Here in this country, who contributes to anybody's elections? Maybe your close friends would contribute, chip in here and there, but it's supposed to be from anybody. People that you don't know, but they know you, and they feel you can be a good representative, should contribute to, an example is when President Buhari was going to contest for office in 2015. Ordinarily, Nigerians contributed for his election. That's how it is supposed to be for all levels. But here we are. You hear the names that want to contest for office these days. And you and I know that these are people that are not waiting for anybody to contribute money for them because they have the money.
Money bags, isn't it?
You know what I'm saying?
So everything goes back to the monetization of our political process. Is it possible to separate these two? Because you just said that the governors mostly, they fund these political parties, and it's almost impossible for the piper not to be able to dictate the tone. It's applicable in virtually all spheres, of our endeavors in the country. So how do we separate the person of a governor from a political party as an institution? How do we strengthen that?
No, I think it has to be through not only legislation. Legislation is important in terms of, the quotas from where funds should be raised for the running of the party. I think it should be such that there's a limit, because you see, resources of a state belongs to the people of the state. So because you are governor, if we follow our laws, you don't have a right to dip your hands into the resources of the state and take it and give it to your political party. You don't have that right. It's against the law. But of course they do it through other means. So first of all, there should be the basic law prohibiting that level of funding. And it should be followed through by ensuring that there is full implementation and by checking the books of the parties to know where their funding is coming from. And then the parties should also need to be more proactive. The parties, because of this culture of getting donations from big donors such as state governments and so on, oftentimes relax. They don't think of ways and means of generating funds for the party. And believe you me, in a country like Nigeria, once people believe in a particular political party, they will contribute to that party if they feel the party is going to represent their interest. Like I said, I'll give the same example I gave when President Buhari contested for office in 2015. Majority of Nigerians believed that he had what was needed to protect them and their interest, and they brought out their money. People that are ordinary folks on the streets that were eking out a living contributed from these meager resources. They contributed money because they believed that he would represent their interest. And therefore, if a political party had projected itself as a party that is willing to protect the interests of the people, I believe members of the party and ordinary folks on the streets that are not even members of the party will contribute not only to the funding of the party, but to fund the campaign expenditure of candidates sponsored by that political party. So we need to now mature to that level. We've made our mistakes. We've been practicing democracy in this country for the last 22 years now. I think it's time we move to the next level where funding, which is a very important issue, which will help to extricate the control of some few money bags on the parties, and which is very, very critical, because the parties need to be independent of such kind of influences. And that is why, instead of giving them tools like consensus, I think we should de-emphasize giving them such tools that will make that they can hold on to continue to dictate to the parties.
Okay, now would like you to share your thoughts on a particular section that a lot of people say is unconstitutional and undemocratic, in that particular, bill that says it will allow only those who participated in the party primary to challenge in court school certificates, birth certificates, and other credentials of co-contestants. And don't you think that it further restrains citizens from actively participating in politics?
Well, as a lawyer, I'll tell you that this also has to do with the issue of locus. Whether as someone who had participated in the process, in the contest, the locus, is restricted to only those that participated, or another Karkari member of the party also has locus, what they call locus standi. And I think that is within the realm of the judiciary. Because, and I'll tell you, if for an individual has issues with his certificate, for instance, and he's going to go ahead, he's been elected as a representative within the party, he's going to go ahead and face another election, to be the representative either in the National Assembly, or House Assembly, or governor, or whatever. And I know that this guy, doesn't have the qualification. But when he eventually gets elected, my interest will be affected because he's going to represent me. Now the question is, do I have the locus to challenge him? Have I exhibited sufficient interest? Can I, exhibit to the court that indeed I'll be affected by this gentleman's representation or this lady's representation of me in Parliament, for instance? Then the court will sit down and evaluate to see if indeed I'll be affected. The courts often do not like people, busybodies as they call them, people that do not have interest in a particular matter, all of a sudden taking it onto themselves and going to court and just making the whole place so busy. That's what is frowned at. But this section of the law, I find it a bit restrictive, because in addition to the members of the party, to those that contested, I believe those that will be affected includes members of the party that this gentleman is going to represent. And in some cases where you do not have the requisite qualification, and then for some reason is not detected, and then you get into office, the opposition, for instance, challenges you, and then the court decides that, yeah, indeed, you don't have that qualification that you claim to have, or your certificate is forged, or the age you declared, you are less than that age, and what have you. The courts often give, instead of ordering another round of elections, give the seat to the person with the second highest votes, at the election. And that will be the other party, another party. So you see, by your action, you're going to make my party lose that seat. So will I be affected if my party loses that seat? I contributed, I donated to the party, I donated, for your elections. I went and campaigned for you. I spent my time, energy, resources to ensure that my party wins a particular seat. And then you don't have the qualification, and I realize it, and you say, I cannot challenge it. I think that would not be right. And to that extent, I wouldn't even like a situation whereby we over-legislate. I'm a lawyer, like I said. I've been a legislator myself. But I often frown at situations where, the legislature takes, its role, to a ridiculous extent, to like micro-legislate. There are some things that you leave for the judiciary to do their work.
All right. Another major issue as we approach the 2023 elections is this concern about cost of elections, cost of campaigns, and all of that, and how it's going to have an impact on the issue of inclusion of youth, women, and all of that. So, for instance, now we've seen that there's a review of the money, the spending limit of politicians in elections. The president, for instance, can spend us to as much as 5 billion naira, and and so on. Lawmakers and the rest of that. How is this going to, impact on the issues of inclusion in your thought, and how can it be resolved?
Yeah, it's a very dicey thing, in the sense that, yes, because of the rate of inflation we have in the country, what before now 1 billion naira could do, like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, even 2 billion naira will not do that. So it makes a lot of sense by increasing the threshold,
Okay.
in terms of how much a candidate can spend. Because we all go to the market, don't we? We buy rice. How much was rice 4 or 5 years ago? How much is a bag of rice? You know what I'm saying? So a billboard.
But we have a group of Nigerians who, are interested in participating in the whole process. But clearly this is not going to be helpful for them. But I will let you talk about that shortly after this breather. We have to go on a break. And so when we come back, you talk more on that. We've been speaking with Honorable Mohammed Kumalia, former minority leader, House of Representatives, in the studio. Stay with us. We'll come back and continue the discussions.
Good people of Federal Capital Territory, the area council elections will be conducted on Saturday, February 12th, 2022. This is an opportunity for you to vote for the candidate of your choice for the positions of chairman and councillors of the area councils. Elections will take place in all 6 area councils of Amak, Abaji, Kwali, Gwagwalada, Kuje, and Buari. The FCT administration is working closely with INEC to ensure that the elections are conducted in a free and fair atmosphere. Are you a supporter of any of the candidates in the elections? Avoid showing your support through thuggery and violent behavior. All candidates contesting various positions should remember that only God gives power. Elections should therefore not be seen as a do-or-die affair. We must shun any form of violence, malpractices, vote buying, ballot box snatching, or anything that will make the election unfair. Be patriotic. Perform your civic duties. Vote for the candidate of your choice in a peaceful and orderly manner. Let all electorates exercise their franchise without intimidation. Voting is your right. Use it wisely. This message is from the FCT administration.
right, thank you for staying with us. This is Daybreak, reaching you live from the nation's capital and the Trust Television's capital, headquarters, as a matter of fact. And here we've been having discussions around the electoral amendment bill, which has been harmonized by the National Assembly, awaiting assent by the President. And we have in the studio Honorable Mohammed Kumalia, the former minority leader, House of Representatives, and he's been giving us his own perspectives on this bill. So yes, we were talking about the cost of elections, spending for campaigns, and how that is going to have an implication on youth and women inclusion.
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear, and I hear the concern that you seem to, raise. It is one thing to put a limit, a cap, or to increase the threshold of how much you can spend. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's the minimum. So if you say you can spend 5 billion naira for presidential campaign max, that's the upper limit. So you can spend 500 million, you can spend 1 billion, you can spend 2 billion, and so on. So you have different presidential candidates with different sources of funding, spending different amounts of money. But the issue is no matter how much you have, you cannot spend more than 5 billion.
Yeah, but it puts someone at a disadvantage. I mean, if you look at the competition that will have to happen now, some do not even have as much as half of that amount.
Yeah,
and they're in the race as well.
I agree with you. You see, the disadvantage, no matter how much is the threshold, even let's say it's 1 billion naira, still there's some level of, if you like, to borrow your disadvantage, in the sense that we're not all the same. Our financial resources, the financial one individual and another is certainly not the same. So you have different presidential candidates with different sources of funding. Some people may have more access to funding or have more funds themselves that they can pull from, for example, to spend. So I think as far as the law is concerned, what is of paramount importance is to ensure that you do not, dominate the space with, say, a lot of money that is limitless. Some people may have very deep pockets. So if there's no limit, for instance, now they say it's 5 billion, some other chap can come with $50 billion, and spend because he has it. He has the money. So the essence of putting a cap is it's not, the National Electoral Commission, so to speak, is not, Independent National, is not putting these figures just off the top of their head. There are a lot of calculations that go into it. For a decent presidential election, the travels, the campaign materials, the television ads, the jingles, the radio, the logistics in terms of transportation of yourself, your campaign team, and so on. All these things are imputed and the length of time. So you have maybe between the primary election and the general election, maybe 4 months or thereabout. So they sit and calculate all that. So if 5 years ago, 1 billion could do, today because of inflationary trends and what have you, maybe, like 5 billion would be decent.
Well, how are we even going as far as implementing that law of, spending limits?
I don't think we are doing well.
Because already, monetization of the whole process, we see vote buying, at different levels, sometimes even involving buying cars, for, people.
And also, I think, doesn't it encourage godfatherism where, those who cannot even contest, put representatives they can actually manipulate?
Yeah, I agree, and it's part of the challenge we have, that we have to find a way of eliminating, because oftentimes the younger elements, when I first contested for office, I was a young man, and you don't expect a young man to have money. He's young. He has not worked enough. Maybe just I think I was about 7 years into my career. as a lawyer when I was begun to come and contest for office. 7 years into your career, how much money can you save? You get my point. So there is that disadvantage for younger people. But again, today, the majority of the voters are again the young people. So the young people have to be creative to tap into that pool. And the young people really have to take the bull by the horns. Because if you want to represent me, you need to convince me that you have what it takes to represent me. I'm not just going to vote for you because you're a young man. I'm not going to, maybe I'm in my middle ages, I do things a bit more carefully now. So I want somebody that is, very a perceptive mind, a discerning mind, a steady hand. So that does not mean to say that a young man cannot be perceptive, discerning, or steady. But you need to exhibit that. I need to see that you have some vision, you have the determination, you have the courage, and you have the conviction. Then I can say, okay, this young man is promising, and I can even contribute to your campaign. So, it's a give and take situation, and the youth have to tap in if they want to represent us. They need to tap into the pool of the mass of the people, which are the youth, 1. 2, they need to put their acts together. It's not enough to be young.
You mean acts? Because if you talk about putting acts together, we have a lot of some old folks, who are also not having their acts together. We see a lot of drama, in the news every now and then. So it's not peculiar to young people. So if you talk about putting acts together, what exactly are you referring to?
Yeah, if you have old people that are not putting the acts together, kick them out. It's as simple as that. If you have a young people that's not putting the acts together, kick them out. The point is this: representing a people is not a tea party. It's not just for the sake of you calling yourself, oh, honorable this, senator this, governor this. It comes with huge responsibility. And you need to show that you are capable and able to shoulder this responsibility and to be able to discharge. That's the act. That's what I mean by putting the acts together. You need to convince me if you want me to vote for you. I'm a young man. There are older people that see me, they say, this young man. You understand what I'm saying? They still call me a young man. Yes, I know. I'm not yet 60.
I'm just curious about what it takes to convince Nigerians to support you in an election, especially when you look at the level of poverty in the country. If you look at the level of education and awareness, political awareness in the country, one wonders what does it take to, convince Nigerians to support, their ambition, political ambition.
You see, honestly speaking, a person who wants to represent the people must want to do that for the sake of the people. So, first of all, altruistic intention. You must be honest that indeed you care about the people that you want to represent. That it is about them and not about you. As I'm sitting down here with you now, I've reached a level that I'm not interested in anything for the purpose of myself, so to speak. Because anything about myself should be private, and I should go and find the time to do it for myself. But anything that has to do with public representation, public office, is not about Kumalia. So if you ask me to go to the House of Assembly today, or the House of Representatives, or the Senate, or to be a governor, to be president, it shouldn't be about Kumalia anymore.
Okay.
And the people have the eyes to see.
True.
So you must be honest. And if they can see, they'll support you.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We appreciate your thoughts on the program. We have to end it because of our time on the show today.
Yes, well, we have yet another discussion. Do stay tuned. Thank you so much, Honorable Komalia, for being here in the studio with us. And we'll take a quick break and we'll be back in a bit. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back. Quickly, before we wrap up, let's take a look at the monetary policy. Now, the 283 Monetary Policy Committee meeting of the Central Bank of Nigeria has kept all policy parameters unchanged. The committee on Tuesday voted to hold the monetary policy rate at 11.5%. Now, the asymmetric corridor was thus retained at plus 100 and minus 700 basis points around the MPR, the cash reserve ratio at 27.5% and the liquidity ratio at 30%.
All right, now joining us virtually is Muda Yusuf, CEO, Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise, former Director General, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He joins us to give us perspectives on what to expect now. Good morning and welcome to Daybreak.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be with you.
All right. Now we see that the MPC is retaining the interest, the monetary policy, where literally maintaining the status quo. You know, at the moment. What's your thoughts on the outcome of that meeting?
Well, the decision to hold rates didn't come as a surprise. That was the expectation of many analysts. Although in many parts of the world, because of the high inflationary pressures that are being experienced, many CBN have actually resorted to what you call monetary policy normalization, which means that quite a number of them are rolling back all the stimulus packages that they have put in place since the onset of the pandemic, because of high inflationary pressure. For instance, the Bank of England is experiencing, in England, the Bank of England is contemplating a normalization of monetary policy, rolling back some of those stimulus, because in UK, they're experiencing a 30-year high inflation. In the United States, the US Federal Reserve is also contemplating a hike in rates, again because of high inflation, 40-year high inflation. The same thing is true of the European Central Bank and the Central Bank of South Africa. So with the level of inflation that we had, naturally people will expect, or the natural thing to expect is that interest rates should be raised. At least the MPR should adjust. But according to what the CBN said, we have a peculiar situation in Nigeria. Of course, we have the challenge of inflation, but we also have the challenge of growth. And at this time, it is better to continue to pursue the objective of growth because the economy is still recovering from the shocks of the pandemic. The economy needs to create a lot more jobs and all of that. We need to grow output. So that informed the decision of the Central Bank of Nigeria to retain the rates or to maintain the status quo, as it were, because the CBN argued that to go on tightening mode, that will affect investment. If you go on loosening mode, that may also disrupt the current balance that you have in the macroeconomic environment. So the safest thing to do was to hold all the rates, which is what the CBN did. And the CBN has been holding rates for quite a while now, just to enable the economy to recover from the shocks of the pandemic.
So how will this affect the pre-election cycle?
Well, it doesn't have much to do with the pre-election cycle because the pre-election cycle has a lot to do with election spending and all of that. But that's at least the MPC meets bi-monthly, at least once in 2 months. So at the next MPC meeting, perhaps if there is any evident reason for those rates to be tampered with, the CBN will know. But as for now, I think that is not a critical consideration. The critical consideration for the monetary authorities is first, the level of inflation, even though we are seeing a very marginal increase in inflation from 15.4% to 15.63% in December. The increase was less than 1%. And don't forget the principal responsibility of central bank in Nigeria, and many central banks actually, is to ensure price stability. And when we talk about price stability, we are talking about interest rate stability, we are talking about foreign exchange stability, and we are talking about the headline inflation. That is the primary responsibility. As we speak now, the issue of the pre-election cycle is not a critical variable in this equation, so it doesn't come into play at this time.
Okay, now, you mentioned it that from the last data released by the NBS, we saw a marginal increase in the inflation rate. Isn't that something to worry about? What was responsible for that increase, and whether or not this decision by the by the MPC will have an impact, on the inflation rate going forward in the year?
Well, the CBN explained the phenomenon. Before the slight hike or spike in inflation, we have had about 7 months deceleration in inflation rates, right from the peak of March in 2021, when we had inflation rate of 18%. We have had a consistent deceleration up until October. So it was in November, up until November. It was in December that we now had a slight spike. And the expectation of the CBN is that the festivities, the consumer demand surge in December was a principal factor in the spike that we had in inflation. And thereafter, we expect a deceleration of inflation. So it's not something that is too high, not something too critical to worry about, particularly if you look at the fact that we had a less than 1% increase in the inflation rate. It was just about 0.23% increase. I think the bigger issue is to see how we can generally bring down the food inflation in particular, how we can support the fiscal authorities to bring down the key drivers of inflation, how we can address the issue of insecurity, how we can address the issue of cost of transportation, energy costs, cost of logistics, and things like that. Those are the more critical issues. But these issues are not squarely within the purview of the central bank. That was why the central bank governor made an elaborate appeal in the MPC communique to the fiscal authorities to come into the fray and see what they can do to support all these monetary initiatives so that we can have a moderation of inflation.
All right. Okay. Now, the federal government would like to get your thoughts on the, suspension of the removal of fuel subsidy. There was this initial announcement by the federal government to take off the subsidy, but then there's a reversal of that. Yesterday, we saw some kind of panic buying in, petrol stations and all of that. So, is that something that is likely to have an implication on, the economy anytime soon?
Well, it has some implications. What we experienced was a clash of economics and politics. I think the government was struggling to balance economic interests with the political interest. And at the end, I think the political interests had an upper hand because it was a question of political expediency. That is what led to the reversal of the decision to remove subsidy, and something like that looks like a suspension of the implementation of the Petroleum Industry Act. From a political point of view, I think maybe perhaps that was what needed to be done because of the inherent political costs of removing subsidy at this time. Our election is next year, and the government also would like to preserve itself in power and will not want to take any serious policy measure that may hurt its chances during the elections. I think that was the overwhelming consideration. On the economic side, it will do a lot of damage to the economy. It will do a lot of damage to investors' confidence because part of the critical objectives of the Petroleum Industry Act was to encourage a lot more investment in the petroleum sector, whether it is upstream or downstream. But with this development, of course, those investments will not come because it has seriously eroded the confidence of investors. It has also given a signal of policy inconsistency, policy somersaults, and all of that. And it will also have implications for the macroeconomic environment, because the government will now have to spend even more on subsidy, perhaps as high as 2 trillion naira. This will affect the capacity of many states, even to pay salaries, to retain their staff. It will affect the capacity of government to fund infrastructure, to fund the security apparatus of government, and so on and so forth. So we are likely to see a bigger deficit in 2022. We are likely to incur a lot more debt, and all of that. So there are quite a lot of prices that we have to pay for taking this decision. So there is a very huge economic cost. But again, this is a political economic decision, which there's very little we can do about.
Thank you so much. We have to end it now because of our time. Thank you for joining us on the program this morning to share your thoughts. We appreciate it.
Thank you, my pleasure.
We've been speaking with Muda Yusuf, the CEO, Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprises, former Director General, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Well, with that, we've come to the end of the show for today.
Yes, we have.
In case you've missed, you can always catch up on our YouTube and also our social media platforms. My name is Aiwaila.
And I'm Dashan Husseina Usman. Have a wonderful day ahead.
Bye.